What do you get when you take a video game console and turn it into a waifu straight out of Data Live? The result is Hyperdimension Neptunia, the ultimate fantasy dream franchise. There is, to be honest, no easy way to summarize exactly what the heck this franchise is to someone that is outside otaku culture. Basically, take an Xbox and turn it into Merryweather Comics. Which, by the way, this series predates the Merryweather Comics by over a decade. You see, this series has been around since 2010 and has gotten a cult following over the years, appreciating the girl power, connections to video game history, and most importantly, the fan service. Just off the novelty of the characters being based off consoles and handhelds alone, it was inevitable this series would attract an audience. What makes this stand out from the other franchises, you may ask? Well, I just told you, didn't I? For the one guy who wanted their PlayStation to look a lot more like someone out of High School DxD, congratulations! It's important to know that Neptunia's distributor is Idea Factory. They have since gone on to release other series such as the Death and Request series and the Mary Skeletor trilogy. But before the studio had their magnum opus, they were actually responsible for producing two of the lowest rated anime of all time according to my anime list, Mars of Destruction and Skeletor Heaven. They are notorious for their major ass suckage and still get brought up from time to time. They are literally a YouTube algorithm farm now. It became clear at this time Idea Factory was in desperate need of getting out of the gutter. Enter Compile Heart, founded in 2006 from the ashes of their predecessor Compile, best known for their Puyo series. Together, the two collaborated to bring to life what would become known as Hyperdimension Neptunia, their crowning achievement that would make the studios a staple in otaku culture. The story centers around four goddesses of a land called Game Industry. The four main characters consist of Neptune, a wacky yet determined leader of Planetoon, which is Sega, Noir, the tsundere leader of La Station, which is Sony PlayStation, Blanc, the fierce leader of Louis, which is Nintendo, and Vert, the busty waifu leader of Leanbox, which is Xbox. One major thing to point out about Neptune, by the way, is she's based on a cancelled Sega console, the Sega Neptune, which was meant to be a standalone version of the 32X, which backfired in sales miserably. I think it's a neat thing to have your main character represent forgotten video game history. It's pretty nice to see. In addition to the four CPU goddesses, all except for Vert have their own sisters, which represent the handhelds. Neptune has Nepgear, which is the Sega Game Gear, Noir has Uni, who is the Sony PSP, and Block has Ram and Ram, whom both represent the Nintendo DS. They combat enemies that represent the likes of piracy and corruption among others. One major recurring villain is Arfoire. They've grown to have an Ash Ketchum Team Rocket thing over the years. It's kind of funny. The overall plot surrounding the franchise is pretty straightforward if you know the ins and outs of the gaming industry and history. What you see is what you get. The four goddesses that represent their nations all fight each other for shares, which are basically the loyalty their fans have to the goddess they worship. With each new game that has been released comes new characters that represent other consoles or developers, oftentimes those being ones that serve as co-producers of Neptunia, including 5PB or NIS America, who distributed the original trilogy of games before Idea Factory began self-releasing this series independently. Speaking of the original trilogy, we got to address the elephant in the room that is their debut game that started it all. As it is with everyone's first try, you can't be too harsh on it as there is always room for improvement, and I would be lying if their first outing was literally make or break for the series having any future. When it was first released in the US in 2011, the game saw scathing reviews not only focusing on the fan service and the overall sexualization of the characters. Granted, not everyone is going to be swayed by such, but it was pointed out that the overall gameplay was laggy and was in dire need of improvement. And listen to the criticism they did. The following sequel, Neptunia Mark II, which focused on the handheld sisters of the CPU goddesses, introduced a revamped battle system that benefited the gameplay by a whole lot. The trilogy as a whole shapes what this series essentially is. While it bears the novelty of playing as moe personified video game console waifus, it plays out as your typical RPG, with 3D dungeon exploration similar to that of the Final Fantasy series. After receiving a cult following with the trilogy, an anime adaptation was greenlit with Daybreak Production, the studio behind JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and the Yurosei Yatsura reboot, producing the animation. The series ran for 12 episodes with 4 OVAs having been released in the years following. The anime takes elements of the story that have been laid out in the trilogy of games we have thus far, and with the experience that the Idea Factory / Compile Heart team got for working beside David Production on the anime, they were given the influence and inspiration to keep at it with the evolution of the Neptunia franchise, which resulted in the Rebirth remakes of the original trilogy, and it's usually how most Neptunia fans have been introduced to the series since then. They feature restructured elements to the story and overall presentation, and with the games also being released to a wider audience on PC, the series benefited from this and have since gone on to release several other spin-offs and sequels in the years to come. Hyper Devotion Noir, anyone? I honestly think this game is worth it just for her shower scene alone. It makes me wanna get pregnant! Get pregnant! Okay, now that is a degenerate-ass way of me telling you Noir is the best goddess in this franchise. Don't at me on that. Let's station forever. Anyway, other spin-offs including the likes of Mega Tank Mention, Blanc Plus, Neptune vs. Zombies, and 4 Goddesses Online expanded on the adventures that the CPUs have gone on in the years they spent together as friendly rivals. The signature touch of fan service and in-jokes about the video game industry have served as a means for the cult fanbase it has to keep in touch with the franchise over the past decade or so. In the midst of all this, Neptunia will receive its 4th main title, Mega Dimension Neptunia V2. And no, it's not the 7th game, it's actually spelled that way, meaning it's a sequel to the last main title, Hyperdimension Neptunia Victory. So it's Victory 2, which by the way I should mention, Victory was the first ever Neptunia game that I ever got to play, and let me tell you, it confused the shit out of me seeing the opening of the game and seeing Purple Heart get her ass handed to her and transforming back to Neptune. I thought I'd just gotten the game over so early and I just suck at life. But that's what happens when you play a random game out of context after seeing the cover art and thinking, she looks hot, I'm in. Thank God for my degeneracy though, cause I never would have gotten to know what Neptunia was, or VTubers for that matter, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Getting back to Neptunia V2, this one introduces new lore to the franchise featuring the rise and fall of Uzume to Nobushi, who is the Sega Dreamcast. That's right, the last of the Sega consoles. It's bittersweet considering the Dreamcast have pioneered a lot of modern capabilities we take for granted today like network play, and Xbox would take all the credit for it. Y'all should really get Dreamcast its flowers. Uzume proved to be the girl who sealed the deal for me and my girlfriend, who I introduced Neptunia to, and while she simped for Nisa at first, Uzume's story had her so hooked that she went out and bought a Dreamcast just cause of Uzume, so thank you Neptunia for that. Sadly though, this is the part of the video where Neptunia's fate remains up in the air. For you see, Neptunia V2 has been its most recent main title for over 8 years now. From here on in, it's been spin-off after spin-off and crossover after crossover, which for a while it was fun, but has many of us wondering when the story is actually going to progress in the main canon. There's been some experimenting going on with the likes of Super Neptunia RPG as well as Neptunia Virtual Stars, which as I mentioned earlier, this series directly was responsible for introducing me to VTubers, so I'm going to give props where it's due, with the likes of Kizuna Ai, who even got her own DLC story for this game, as well as others like Hololife's Sakura Miko making appearances on the game's loading screen, exposed me to the world of VTubers. And suddenly I'm here wishing Narissa could be my mommy and Mori could read me bedtime stories. Heck, I've even become a VTuber myself. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Crossovers have included the likes of Sega Hard Girls, which is another series that features waifus based on consoles. In this case, it's all about Sega in that universe. They've also had their own anime as well, which is vastly different from Neptunia's. Basically, take Lucky Star and put it into Wreck-It Ralph. We even got Sonic involved in this whole thing, so it's definitely a watch if you're curious enough. Other crossovers include one with Senran Kagura, another series notorious for its fan service, and well, let's just say if you're interested in playing that series as well, might not want to do so with my favorite Kansu waifu. In recent years, it's been no secret Noir has not been kind to games like these, including those that she herself is in. How ironic. It's funny how self-aware Neptunia is about this too, as this was brought up in Sisters vs. Sisters, which in an ironic twist have been subject to censorship after they failed to put down Blanc's signature language in the rating description, forcing her to go soft in a future update. That's not all though. Many of the games, including others that Idea Factory and Compound Heart have been involved in, like say Mugen Souls, all have some sort of censorship. Now if that's not enough, their recent title Neptunia Riders vs. Dogus will be the first Neptunia title to bear an E10 rating, a far cry from when Neptunia Mark II received an M rating. We now have an existing franchise that went from M to E10. That's insane. On top of that, it's possible Erika Lindbeck may not even reprise her role as Uzume, as she's taking part in a strike happening at the time of this video, so we might be seeing another Erin Fitzgerald style departure come next month. Yeah, I should mention, when she took part in an earlier strike years ago and was replaced as Noir by Erika Mendez, who herself has won my heart as Ryugu from Kill la Kill, the Lustation Empire was quick to call her inferior to Fitzgerald's Noir, and to be fair, she had the best scream in the anime. But that's the least of my worries. With all these spin-off titles and yet no Neptunia 5 in sight, what's next for the franchise? For what it's worth, the Neptunia franchise has opened the doors for a lot of ideas to be left to the imagination. What we've gotten thus far in the series has given us creativity and a unique look at the video game industry, and rightfully has earned the audience it has gathered. They are essentially the middle child between the OS taunts that represent the Windows line and the likes of browser, social media, and console waifus that Merryweather Comics and Princess Hinhoi have developed in the years after Neptunia initially launched. By no means is this franchise for everyone. If anything, it knows exactly what its audience wants. It gives them what they ask for, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Adorable hot waifus who battle for their nations and for the loyalty of their fan bases that they have worked hard to gather. If this is your type of thing, this franchise is for you. What do you think of Neptunia? Have you heard of this franchise before, and are you interested in checking it out? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching this video. Please support my Patreon and my Ko-fi, and follow me on Twitter, and subscribe to my channel. I upload weekly, and join my Discord to be part of the movement. Special thanks to Jason N for supporting the Patreon. If you'd like to get a shout out at the end of my videos, please support the Patreon. This is your Sunshine Yui Tachibana, signing out.